Hello everybody, my name is Ecstasy, and today we're going to be doing a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon Brilliant Diamond using only the power of friendship. We start the game by stealing Professor Owen's Turtwig, who we name Loner Dingus, because he doesn't evolve with friendship and is therefore not a good friend for us. So we move up to Route 204 to catch our real starter, a Badoo, who we sit on the naming screen for 10 minutes because we haven't thought up a naming scheme for him yet, but eventually settle on naming him Kurama. With Kurama in our party, we no longer need Loner Dingus, and he is immediately boxed for life. Next, we move up to the Ravaged Path where we can find our next encounter, a Zubat, who we name Jin. After a little training, I feel we're ready to take on our rival. We start the battle by paralyzing a Starly and trying to set up enough growth so that we can take out Chimchar relatively fast. But Starly takes it like a champ and doesn't lose a single turn to paralysis, and by the time Chimchar comes out, I do not feel that Badoo can handle it, so we switch out to Jin and try to confuse him. And we fail to confuse him, and we lose. So we catch a new Badoo, and then throw about a dozen balls at Zubat before it kills Kurama. And we wipe again. So we catch another new Badoo, and this time we don't fail to catch another Zubat. And after training them up, I feel we're ready to take on our rival again. And this time, Kurama makes it through Starly with enough HP that I feel safe enough to leave him in. We manage to paralyze Chimchar before sucking him dry, winning us the battle. Moving on to Orberg City, we get to take on Rourke, the first gym leader. Against Geodude and Onix, he set up a few growths before using Absorb to keep us, tip-top shape. Ooh. And then Cranidos comes out. We smack him hard with an Absorb, but he survives with just a sliver of HP left. Cranidos hits back with a critical hit Bulldoze, almost taking out Kurama, but we manage to take him out next turn with another Absorb, winning us the first badge. Woo. Up next is our fight with Galactic Commander Mars, but before we can do that, we need to evolve Badoo into a Roselli, frickin' heck. So we do what all good friends do, and run around in circles for half an hour until Kurama loves me enough to evolve into a Roselia. The fight with Mars is very easy, as we can just paralyze her Pokemon and set up growths, and the boosted special attack makes Pregly go down very easily. And Zubat soon follows suit. And with Mars out of the way, we can now go to the Eterna Forest, home of our next encounter, a Baniri, who we name Botan. Next up, we can fight Gardenia, the second gym leader, but before then, we can evolve Jin into a Golbat. We're ready to take on Gardenia. She opens with a Cherubi, who goes down to a single Poison Fang. Next up is a Turtwig, who survives the first Poison Fang and sets up a Reflect, and then goes down to Poison Fang. And her final Pokemon is a Roserade. A Roserade outspeeds Jin and lands a Stun Spore, which would paralyze him if we weren't big-brained and equipped him with the Cherry Berry first. So Jin manages to land a very weak Poison Fang. So the next turn, we decide to use Supersonic, but it misses, and we get paralyzed. So we use another Supersonic, but it misses, but Reflect wears off, so we can go back to using Poison Fangs. And after whittling each other down and getting her to use her Super Potion and a Citrus Berry, we are within KO range and have to switch out for Kurama. Roserade's Poison Stings do very little damage to Kurama, giving us enough time to set up enough growths to take him out with a single critical hit cut, earning us the second Gym badge. Immediately after this fight, Jin evolves into a Crobat, giving us our first fully evolved Pokemon. At Route 211, we can catch a Chingling, who we name... who do we name her again? At Route 211, we can catch a Chingling, who we name Keiko. And dipping into Mount Coronet, we can catch a Cleffa, who we name Genkai, who very quickly evolves into a Clefairy. We start the fight with Saturn. Yeah. Wait, no, this is Jupiter. Frick. We start the fight with Jupiter by sending out Jin, who manages to quickly take out Zubat after dodging a supersonic. Ooh, go Jin. Skuntank is out next, and we use Thief to steal its Citrus Berry before we start to hit it with some air cutters. Unfortunately, it gets a special attack drop on us after using Snarl, so we have to swap out to Genkai for a sec before swapping back into Crobat and getting us the win with even more air. Frickin' heck. Next, we move on to Heart Home City, where we have another encounter with our rival. We open with Botan to take on his Starly, and by spamming Quick Attack, we manage to win. Ooh, what strategy. Much wow. Monferno is out next, and we swap into Jin. And Jin manages to sweep his entire team with Air Cutter and Poison Fang. Now that we beat our rival, we can talk to this hiker and he'll give us an egg. After running in circles for half an hour, the egg hatches into a Happiny, who we name Yusuke, because I distinctly remember the anime saying Chansey was really good at fighting or something. So yeah, very fitting name. And with all that running around we did, Keiko and Botan now like us enough to evolve into a Chimecho and a Lopunny respectively. And shortly after, Yusuke also evolves into a Chansey, and then also a Blissey. We move on to Veilstone City, home of the third gym. Yeah, I bit my tongue, frick. Up next is the Veilstone City gym. Unfortunately, the level cap for this gym and the next are the same, so we can only take half our team into this one. We open the fight with Genkai, who whittles down Meditite with flamethrowers while we try to stall out its screens. And eventually, Meditite goes down and Machoke comes out. We try to whittle him down too so we can end the fight with our screens up. And luckily, we managed to get a couple Hyper Potions out of it too before it goes down. And finally, Lucario is out next. It hits Genkai hard with a Metal Claw, almost taking her out, and her Flamethrower only brings him down to about half HP. So we have to switch out now. We bring out Jin, who uses Air Cutter, taking out Lucario and winning us the third gym badge. Now unfortunately in this fight, Jin went past the level cap and must now be put in timeout. We move on to Pastoria City, and before challenging Wake, we go into the Great Marsh to catch ourselves in a Zuril, who we name Yukina. We then run around in circles for another half hour until Yukina, I always said Yukina, likes us enough to evolve into a Marill and then into an Azumarill. And after a little more training, we are ready to take on what's-his-face. We open the fight with Genkai against Gyarados. Gyarados hits Genkai hard with an Ice Fang, but her cute charm ability activates and Gyarados falls in love with her. Genkai then lands a nasty Thunderbolt, leaving Gyarados with what must be like 3 or 4 HP, I don't know. Thinking he was gonna heal, we try for another Thunderbolt, but Gyarados uses Flail, killing Genkai. We swap Botan in and try to get the immediate revenge kill with a Quick Attack, but now he feels like healing. So we use a couple charms to lower his attack while we swap out to Kurama, who takes out Gyarados with a Giga Drain. Quagsire is out next, but it goes down to a single Giga Drain, leaving Wake with only one more Pokemon, his Floatzel. We swap into Yukina to tank an Ice Fang, but she gets frozen. And stays 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 frozen. And she's dead. So now we send out Yusuke, who also immediately gets frozen by an Ice Fang. But he manages to thaw out in time to hit Floatzel with a Covet and steal a Citrus Berry, which does absolutely nothing for Yusuke. Fantastic. Yusuke dies. Botan is out next, and she does the unthinkable and doesn't get frozen by Ice Fang. This allows her to use a charm before getting taken out by Brine. So now we switch in Kurama and try to hit Floatzel hard with a Giga Drain. And we don't freeze to Ice Fang, but we do flinch. And then we freeze to the next one. And Kurama dies, so all we have left now is Keiko. Keiko tanks a bite surprisingly well, then lands a Psychic, taking Floatzel out, winning us the 4th gym badge after 5 casualties. So with us in dire need of new teammates, I decide to head underground to catch a Togepi, who we name Koenma. We then briefly stop to humiliate our rival again with Jin, before we catch a Pichu, who we name Hiei. Once again, we get to run around in circles for another half hour. Eventually, Hiei and Koenma like us enough to evolve, and we use a Thunderstone to evolve Hiei into a Raichu. Ooh. Heading back to Hearthome, we get to take on Fantina, the 5th gym leader. We open the fight with Hiei against her Drifblim. We set up with Nasty Plot first before taking Drifblim down with a single Thunderbolt. Gengar is up next, and Hiei gets confused, but takes Gengar out with a single Thunderbolt anyways. Unfortunately, Curse Body disables our Thunderbolt, and Mismagius is up last. We try to break through confusion to hit Mismagius with a Nuzzle and paralyze it, but it uses Phantom Force and vanishes. And the next turn after it hits, Hiei also hits himself in confusion, so we have to swap into Jin, and by spamming Thief and stealing the Expert Belt that Mismagius is holding, we manage to take it out, winning us the 5th gym badge. Ooh. Now we can move on to Canalave City, where we have another fight with our rival. He opens with Staravia, and we send out Hiei, who takes a quick attack before taking Staravia out with a single Thunderbolt. Our rival sends out Heracross next, so we swap into Jin as it uses Leer, and then take it out with a single Air Cutter. Monferno is out next, and it survives an Air Cutter, and takes us to just above half health with a Flame Wheel. But it goes down to an Air Cutter on the next turn. Weasel is out next, and we hit it with a Cross Poison, leaving it with barely any HP left as it hits us with Brine. Next turn we take it out with U-Turn, letting us switch into Keiko as Roselia comes out. And we take it out with a single Psychic, winning us the fight. With our rival out of the way, we can now go to Iron Island. And not only do we get an egg holding our next encounter here, which means more running, but we also found a shiny stone that lets us amputate Koenma's arms. We run around for another half hour, and eventually a Riolu hatches from the egg, who we name Kuwabara. And it's about here that I got tired of waiting for honey trees, and decided to just grab a Munchlax from the underground. Because there are 4 possible trees you can get a Munchlax from, I decided I'd have 4 chances to catch one. Turns out, Munchlaxes can learn self-destruct. And Hiei is dead. Fantastic. Luckily, the second Munchlax we encountered didn't know self-destruct, and we catch him and name him Chew. So now we get to run around in circles for another half hour, until Chew and Kuwabara like us enough to evolve into Lucario and Snorlax. And after a little more training, we're ready to take on the 6th gym leader. Or I would say that if I didn't forget to record the fight. Turns out I played all the way from here up until just before Candace before I realized I wasn't recording. But the fights basically boil down to Kuwabara throwing his blue balls at everyone. So moving right on to Candace, she opens the fight with Snover, and we send out Koenma, who takes it out with a single flamethrower. Medicham comes out next, and we swap into Keiko. Keiko tanks a rock slide on the switch, but comes out of it doing pretty okay. Keiko avoids the next rock slide and hits Medicham with a yawn. Medicham then uses Bulk Up before falling asleep, and we hit it with a strong Psychic. Hale brings it into the red, and Candace switches it out to Sneasel, blocking our Psychic. So we switch into Kuwabara, but Sneasel just feels like setting up some Hone Claws, so we use this time to swap back into Koenma, who takes it out with a single Dazzling Gleam. A sleeping Medicham is out next, and even though Candace uses a Hyper Potion, it's still taken out by a single Dazzling Gleam by Koenma. And up last is Abomasnow. Koenma uses Flamethrower and takes him out immediately, winning us the 7th gym badge. So Candace did with the 7th badge in hand. We can now take on Team Galactic. First up is Cyrus, but because he has no fully evolved Pokemon, he goes down pretty easily. Up next is Saturn, who we are definitely fighting for the first time, but because we taught Kuwabara Psychic, he also goes down extremely easily, and we're able to free the 3 Ugly Lake Gremlins. But we're not done embarrassing Cyrus yet. We follow him up to Spear Pillar, where we find him turning the sky... I don't know how to describe this, but it's really ugly and I don't like it. Before we can take on Cyrus again, we have to team up with our rival to take on Jupiter and Mars. We open with Koenma against their 2 Bronzor. We try to take them out with a single flamethrower, but they survive and manage to set up Reflect and Light Screen. Mars's Bronzor goes down the next turn and she sends out Perugly. We use this time to swap into Kuwabara as the other Bronzor dies and Skuntank comes out, putting us in a precarious position. We swap Kuwabara out for Chu, who takes a flamethrower from Skuntank very well, and Perugly digs underground. Perugly hits Chu with a dig, but does very little damage, and Chu uses high horsepower to bring Skuntank to just over half HP. The Body Slam from Munchlax then brings him below half and paralyzes it, but its Citrus Berry brings it back over to half. And on this turn, their screens wear off, so our high horsepower should take him out this next turn. Perugly lands a Body Slam, doesn't get the paralysis, and Chu takes out Skuntank. Munchlax lands a Body Slam, bringing Perugly down to just over half. Because Chu's getting low on HP, we swap into Jin as Jupiter's Golbat comes out, and Perugly Body Slams Munchlax while Golbat Sludge Bombs Jin. Jin uses a Sludge Bomb to take out Perugly, leaving Mars and Jupiter with just their Golbats. We can't do a thing to Jin, and they both eventually go down to Air Cutter. The art style of this game makes it really, really hard to be intimidated by this. The battle with Cyrus opens up with a Honchkrow, and we send out Koenma. Koenma uses a Dazzling Gleam, and one-hit KOs Honchkrow. Crobat is out next, and predicting a poison attack, we swap into Kuwabara, and he uses Cross Poison, doing absolutely nothing. He then sets up a Tailwind while we use Rock Tomb, doing less damage than I had hoped for, but lowering his speed. We manage to avoid the next Air Cutter and land another Rock Tomb, but before we can take him out with a final Rock Tomb, he uses U-Turn and swaps into Gyarados. Rock Tomb does a decent amount, but we have to switch Kuwabara out. So we swap into Jin. Gyarados uses Earthquake, which of course doesn't affect us, and Jin lands a strong Sludge Bomb, poisoning Gyarados. Ice Fang does a decent chunk of damage, and Cyrus uses a full restore next turn. So after a few more Sludge Bombs, we're forced to U-turn back into Kuwabara, who tanks an Ice Fang on the switch. And then knowing an Earthquake is coming, we swap back into Koenma, except Cyrus used a Super Potion. But we still managed to take it out in 2 Air Slashes. only having to deal with one Ice Fang. Crobat is back out, and we swap back into Kuwabara. Crobat lands an Air Cutter that goes down to a Rock Tomb. Cyrus's final Pokemon is a Weavile, who outspeeds Kuwabara and uses a Dig, avoiding his Aura Sphere. Before the Dig can land, we swap back into Jin, and then back into Chu, tanking an Aerial Ace. Chu tries to land a Hammer Arm, but Weavile uses Dig to avoid it, so we hit it the next turn, but his Chople Berry keeps it alive. But after a couple more turns, we land another Hammer Arm, winning us the fight. All that's left to do is for us to fight Dialga, and I still don't know what's going on with these Skyboxes, but Kuwabara just takes them out with 2 Aura Spheres, so we don't have to look at this ugly Skybox anymore, thank heavens. And shortly after, we move on to face Volkner, the 8th gym leader. He opens up with a Raichu, and we send out Chu. He immediately lands a Volt Switch, switching out to Ambipom, who tanks a high horsepower with about half HP left. We then swap in Kuwabara, who tanks 2 double hits before it can land an Aura Sphere, taking Ambipom out. Raichu comes back out, and we swap back into Chu, except Raichu uses another Volt Switch, and switches into Octillery. Octillery tries to land an Octazooka, but misses and gets brought into the yellow by a Body Slam. The next Octazooka hits, doing mediocre damage before being taken out by another Body Slam. Raichu is out again, and once again it Volt Switches, this time into Luxray, Volkner's ace. Unfortunately for Luxray, it's being swapped into a high horsepower, bringing it down to just under half HP, but its Citrus Berry brings it back up. Luxray lands a Thunder Fang, bringing Chu into KO range as he lands another high horsepower, bringing Luxray into KO range as well. We swap into Keiko, who tanks 2 attacks very well, being left with 3 HP before landing a Psychic and taking out Luxray. All that's left is Raichu, and I'm not ready to lose another teammate at this point, so choosing what to do here was a little difficult. Eventually, I decide to bring Jin out, who comes in on a Volt Switch, bringing him down to fairly low HP. Jin then uses a Sludge Bomb, bringing Raichu down to about a 3rd HP as it uses Nuzzle, paralyzing Jin. So once again, we have to switch. I decide to bring Chu out, who tanks a Surf from Raichu, and he's left at just 48 HP, just over the red. Raichu uses Volt Switch next, bringing Chu down to 5 HP as he uses Body Slam, taking him out and winning us the last gym badge. With all the gym badges earned, we can enter Victory Road, where we can do some training for our last battle with our rival before the Elite Four. Our rival opens up with a Staraptor, and we choose to start with Jin. Jin manages to take out Staraptor with a Sludge Bomb and Giga Drain, taking minimal damage before Heracross comes out. Air Cutter takes out Heracross with a single attack, and Floatzilla's out next. And we use Giga Drain, taking Floatzel out with a single attack too. Up next is Snorlax, who we don't threaten particularly well, so we use U-Turn, and we swap into Chu, our own Snorlax. Unfortunately, Buttface McGee's Snorlax uses Covet and steals our leftovers, so now we can't really stall his Snorlax out, but luckily we're able to take it out in just 2 Hammer Arms before we're put to sleep by Yawn. Infernape is up next, so we swap back into Jin, who tanks a close combat really well, and then brings Infernape down to what must be 1 or 2 HP with Air Cutter before taking a Flame Wheel. Jin takes Infernape out on the next turn, and all that's left is Roserade, who can do nothing to threaten Jin. So Jin just takes Roserade out with a couple Air Cutters, winning us this fight, and all that we have left to fight is the Elite Four. After grinding up all of our Pokemon to the level cap, we're about as ready as we can be for the Elite Four. First up is Aaron, the Bug-type Elite Four. He starts with the Dustox, and we send out Koenma. Koenma uses Air Slash, getting the one-hit KO on Dustox. And up next is Heracross, who outspeeds us and hits a Rock Slide, dealing just under half damage and causing Koenma to flinch. His Flame Orb goes off, and I do not want to be stuck on the other end of a Guts-boosted Rock Slide, so we have to switch out. We swap into Kuwabara, but not into a Rock Slide, but a Facade. So we take more damage than we were hoping for. But now that we guaranteed that Heracross will use a Fighting-type move next, we can swap into Jin, who tanks a Brick Break extremely well, and then takes out Heracross with an Air Slash. Up next is Beautifly, who also goes down to a single Air Slash, and after Beautifly comes Vespiquen. Now, because Vespiquen knows Acrobatics, we don't want it to use its berry, so we hit it with a Sludge Bomb, which should bring it to just over half HP. But unfortunately, Sludge Bomb also poisons Vespiquen, so after poison damage, it's going to be brought below half HP, and its Citrus Berry will be used. Vespiquen also uses Defend Order to boost its defenses, making a KO even less likely. We land an Air Slash that brings it just outside of the red, as Vespiquen hits a hard Acrobatics, but Poison brings Vespiquen into healing range, and Aaron uses a full Restore. Jin tries for another Air Slash, but misses. After another exchange, I don't feel that Jin can survive this fight, so we have to U-turn out and send out Koenma. But Vespiquen uses Defend Order again, making it even harder for Koenma to take her out at this point. Use an Air Slash, which leaves Vespiquen with almost no HP left, and it hits a hard Acrobatics, bringing us down to the yellow. Aaron uses a full Restore, and we try to hit another Air Slash, bringing Vespiquen down to below half HP. One more Air Slash should take it out, but we get a very low roll, and Vespiquen survives and takes out Koenma. Jin is out next, and uses Air Slash to get the revenge kill. Aaron's final Pokemon is Drapion. We immediately use U-turn and switch out for Chew, who has to tank a Night Slash on the way in. Drapion keeps landing blows, but Chew manages to overcome it with Earthquake, winning us this first fight. Up next is Bertha, the ground specialist. She starts with a Quagsire, and we open up with Jin. A single Giga Drain takes out Quagsire, and she sends out Sudowoodo. We swap into Kuwabara, who takes Head Smash well before landing an Aura Sphere for the KO. Up next is Golem, and we swap back into Jin to avoid an Earthquake. We then use an Air Slash, causing Golem to flinch and letting us Giga Drain it for an easy KO. Whiscash is up next, but it goes down to 2 Giga Drains after missing an Ice Beam. And up last is Hippowdon. We start off with an Air Slash, dealing solid damage as Hippowdon hits us with an Ice Fang. Next up, we use Giga Drain, healing a decent chunk of our HP back as Hippowdon goes for a rest, and is immediately awoken by its Chesto Berry. We land another Giga Drain, bringing Hippowdon to just over half HP as it hits another Ice Fang. Next up, we U-turn into Kuwabara, who takes very little damage from an Ice Fang, and predicting the Earthquake, we swap back into Jin, who then takes out Hippowdon with one more Giga Drain. The next Elite Four member is Flint, who's supposed to be a Fire-type trainer, but has mostly not Fire-type Pokemon. He opens with a Rapidash and we open with Chew, who manages to take out Rapidash with a single Earthquake. Lopunny is out next, and we swap into Keiko, who tanks a high jump kick very well. Lopunny switches to using Fire Punches, while we hit it with a Yawn before swapping into Jin. Fire Punch hits, burning Jin before Lopunny can fall asleep. We use this time to set up 2 nasty plots, and partway through, Jin just heals himself of burn. So, that's cool. Lopunny wakes up and lands another Fire Punch, but does almost no damage. And we take it out with a single Sludge Bomb. Steelix is out next, but it goes down to a single Shadow Ball. Drifloon comes out after that, and also goes down to a single attack. Up next is Infernape, who survives a Sludge Bomb with 1 HP thanks to its Focus Sash, before landing a Thunder Punch, paralyzing Jin. With Jin paralyzed, we have to swap out, so we switch into Kuwabara. But we kinda forgot that Flint can heal, so he uses a full restore. And we have to swap out to Keiko. Keiko tanks a close combat on the switch, and a Fire Punch follow-up before landing a Psychic, taking Infernape out with 1 shot, and winning us this fight. Next up, we get to fight Lucian, the Psychic-type trainer. He starts with a Mr. Mime, and we start with Jin. We try to set up some nasty plots while Mr. Mime sets up some screens. And we try to take it out with a Shadow Ball before it can get Light Screen up. But we only do about half damage, so it gets the Light Screen up. So I figure the best option is to use more nasty plots to try to break through the screens with sheer power. But Mr. Mime lands a Psychic, which brings us below half HP. So we have to go on the attack now. Crobat lands a Sludge Bomb and takes out Mr. Mime. Alakazam is out next, and we swap into Chew, who takes a Shockwave very well on the switch. Alakazam begins to set up nasty plots of its own, while Chew whittles it down with Crunch. Alakazam then uses Future Sight before being taken down by 1 final Crunch. Medicham is out next, and we have to switch Chew out. So we swap into Keiko, who takes much more damage from a high jump kick than I had been expecting. We try to use Dazzling Gleam, but that leaves Medicham at just over half HP, and it takes Keiko out with 1 more high jump kick. So we send Jin back in, who manages to get the revenge kill with an Air Slash. Girafarig is next, and we use this time to switch back into Chew. Girafarig starts to land some Psychics that do hardly any damage to Chew, as he just decides to eat the giraffe. Yeah. And finally, we have Lucian's last Pokemon, a Bronzong. The strategy for Bronzong is the same as with Girafarig. Spam Crunch. And eventually, we win. And all that's left to fight is the champion. Cynthia opens the fight with a Spiritomb, and we send out Chew. First, we set up a substitute to block an incoming Dark Pulse, so we can start setting up workups in peace. But the next Dark Pulse breaks the sub, so we can only get 1 workup in per sub. So we slowly start building up Chew's attack while Spiritomb whittles us down. But something peculiar happens. Turns out, Spiritomb's Dark Pulse was arranged to take out the substitute, and Chew is not able to keep up. Realizing we have to go on the offensive now, we start landing some crunches, but it's not enough to make up for the ground we lost, and Chew goes down. We bring out Kuwabara next, and we set up a nasty plot before tanking a Shadow Ball, and then taking Spiritomb down on the next turn. Gastrodon is next, and we hit it hard with an Aura Sphere, but we don't get the KO, and it hits us with an Earthquake next turn, leaving us with just 1 HP, and we take it out with the next Aura Sphere. Up next is Cynthia's own Lucario, but it outspeeds ours and takes it out. So all we have left is Jin. Both Jin and Lucario set up nasty plot. Looking at the damage calculations, Jin should be able to survive 1 attack from Lucario, and then take it out after a second nasty plot. And then, using Roost to keep Jin healthy, we should be able to wipe out the rest of Cynthia's team. But it turns out, I am very bad at math, and Jin gets taken down by a single attack, losing us the fight and the run. We lay our fallen companions to rest, and just before admitting defeat, I realize we still have one more Pokemon, one more shot to beat the Elite Four. That's right, we're bringing back Loner Dingus. We march right back into the Elite Four, we send Loner Dingus out, and he's dead.